Welcome to the debate. When we think about the process of purifying gold, there's this common assumption of violent, permanent extraction.
Right, like a one-time event.
Exactly. You take the raw, corrupted ore, you throw it into the crucible, and you burn away every single impurity.
Mm-hmm.
The silver, the copper, the iron, you just burn it all away until all that's left is this isolated, transcendent perfection, entirely separated from the dirt it came from.
Yeah, it's a very binary view of purification, isn't it? The fire destroys what isn't needed, and then the pure element is just, forever preserved in a vault somewhere.
Right, a one-way ticket out of the mud.
Yeah.
You leave the dross behind forever. But when you step into the highly specific spiritual cosmology we are examining today, well, that crucible becomes significantly more complicated.
Oh, absolutely. It gets incredibly complex.
Because we're looking at source material that outlines a profound transformation of the human soul. It's a map for moving from a state of intense psychological and spiritual suffering, what the text very bluntly calls being a hell dweller, to a state of pure elevation, a heaven dweller.
Right.
And to achieve this, the text demands, a literal death to one's body consciousness.
Which is, frankly, the absolute definition of spiritual muddy waters. Because in this cosmology, that crucible isn't just a means of permanent escape.
Yeah.
The purified metal doesn't stay locked in a transcendent void.
Yeah.
It is thrust back into a grand cyclical play. I mean, the forge isn't a one-time event, it is an eternal cycle.
And that fundamental tension is the central disagreement we're exploring today. How should a student learner fundamentally understand and navigate this specific spiritual path?
Exactly the question.
So before we dive into the mechanics, let me clearly state my position. I argue that, according to the text, this path is fundamentally transcendent.
Okay.
The primary mechanism for spiritual elevation is total detachment. It's driven entirely by the soul's direct, unmediated connection to the supreme, incorporeal entity Shiva. The entire goal of the student's practice is to escape the inherent degradation of physical incarnations. You are striving to cut the anchor to the physical world, returning to a state of absolute soul consciousness, recognizing that, well, any attachment to the corporeal is exactly what dragged you into suffering in the first place.
And I take a fundamentally different view of the material. I argue that this path is intrinsically corporeal and cyclical. True transcendence, as outlined here, is entirely impossible without a physical, corporeal bridge.
Okay, explain that.
Well, the student's journey isn't about escaping the physical world. It's firmly grounded in structured human incarnations. It relies necessarily on physical mediums, specifically the figure of Prajapita Brahma, to achieve any kind of spiritual elevation.
Right, the human medium.
Exactly. The corporeal isn't just a trap to flee from, It is the necessary instrument for transformation. Without mastering the physical progression, the spiritual elevation simply does not occur.
All right, so to understand what the student is actually supposed to do, I think we have to first establish who is guiding them. How does the spiritual hierarchy actually function?
A crucial starting point, yes.
Because this is where I think the transcendent perspective completely grounds itself in the text. Shiva is established as the ultimate creator. The incorporeal supreme soul is identified as the soul Patit Pavan, which translates to the purifier and the ocean of knowledge. The text states definitively that deities, or really any corporeal beings for that matter, cannot be called the purifier. Even highly elevated figures it names Vishnu and Shankar are not granted the title of Prajapita, or father of humanity. Brahma is merely the first creation. Brahma is just
a completely necessary vessel, though. You can't just brush past that.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. Let's use the analogy of a master artisan and a tool.
Okay, I'm listening.
In this cosmology, Shiva is the master artisan, the ultimate creator of the new world. Brahma is merely the brush used to paint that world. If you're an apprentice trying to learn the craft, shouldn't your devotion, your intellect, and your focus be entirely on the artisan?
Well,
the text explicitly instructs the student to hold the realization that, and I quote, "Mine is one Shiva Baba and none other." It explicitly warns against attachment to physical relations.
Right, but
If the student focuses on the brush, on the corporal medium, they risk tethering themselves to the very bodily consciousness they are commanded to die to. The purification comes from the ocean, not the channel it flows through.
I come at it from a different way, primarily because an artisan without a brush is just someone staring at a blank canvas.
But they're still the artisan.
Sure, but the concept of an artisan is meaningless in a practical sense if they have no means to actually interact with the canvas. The text stresses that a learner fundamentally has two fathers, the soul father, Shiva, and the corporeal human father, Brahma.
Two fathers, yes.
It explicitly states that adoption into the spiritual family, becoming what the text calls a Brahma Kumar or Brahma Kumaris, strictly requires Prajapita Brahma. Shiva cannot adopt or teach souls without entering this corporeal medium.
But the adoption is ultimately by Shiva through the medium. It's a technicality of the physical world.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that it's merely a technicality. Let me tell you why. The text heavily emphasizes the concept of Bapdata. This is a combined entity of the incorporeal father Shiva and the elder brother or medium Brahma. They are presented as sitting together.
Right, sitting together in the chariot.
Exactly. Think about the psychology of the student learner. They aren't just closing their eyes and connecting to a formless, abstract void in some distant dimension of peace. They are sitting in front of a corporeal anchor. The text actually mocks the idea that one can just call out to an omnipresent or incorporeal God without knowing his full occupation, his name, form, time, and place. It says those who don't know the Creator and the beginning, middle, and end of creation are atheists.
That is a strong word, yes.
It really is. True spiritual knowledge in this framework requires recognizing the divine action taking place within the corporeal realm. You cannot bypass the physical family structure. You cannot become part of the Brahmin family without the physical father.
Okay, but if this corporeal anchor is so essential as you claim, we have to look at what actually happens in this physical realm. Because when you look at the soul's journey through its 84 births, it's not a celebration of the physical realm.
No, definitely not a celebration.
It's a story of catastrophic decay. The physical world is called an old world, a terrible hell, rod of Narak. The only reason Shiva enters the corporeal realm in the first place is because the souls have become so degraded they can no longer reach him. It's a rescue mission.
But the degradation isn't an accident. Let's look at the mechanics of those 84 births, because this is where the cosmology really reveals itself.
All right.
The soul's journey is a precise, structured descent. It begins in the Golden Age, the Satyug or Suryavanshi dynasty, where souls are perfect deities with 100% purity.
Right, the peak.
Then the cycle moves down to the Silver Age, the Chandravanshi dynasty, through the Copper Age, and finally hits rock bottom in the Iron Age, Kali Yuga, where souls become entirely impure, or Shudras.
Completely degraded.
Exactly. But this isn't a random series of chaotic reincarnations. It is a fixed 5,000-year cycle. The student must understand they are playing a predetermined part in a grand drama. Comprehending this structure isn't just background reading, it is the core curriculum.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because viewing the 84 births as merely a structured curriculum or, a neutral drama completely ignores the immense tragedy inherent in how the text describes the cycle.
Tragedy?
Yes. The text uses a very specific metallurgical metaphor, alloy. And we need to explain how that alloy is actually formed. In the Golden Age, the soul is pure energy, totally detached. But every time the soul takes a new human body, every time it acts through physical senses, it starts identifying as the body. That false identification creates a karmic residue.
The alloy.
Right. Just as silver, copper, and iron are mixed into pure gold to dilute its value, the soul acquires this alloy, which is impurity, ego, and suffering specifically through its human incarnations. The physical body itself is the source of the alloy.
But the alloy is part of the natural entropy of the process.
It is a process of total decay. The cycle fundamentally degrades the soul. It does not elevate it. Elevation only occurs when the cycle is explicitly interrupted by the Supreme at the end of the Iron Age.
Well, interrupted, yes, but
The text says souls have fallen from being heaven dwellers to hell dwellers after experiencing these 84 births. For the student, the aha moment isn't marveling at the brilliant architecture of a 5,000-year cycle.
Okay, what is it then?
The realization is that they have hit rock bottom and must shed this alloy entirely. The text says you have to become completely pure again. How do you do that? By destroying the attachment to the physical body that gathered the alloy in the first place. You must escape the gravitational pull of the drama.
That's a compelling argument. But have you considered that the material explicitly states that everyone has to go through this? It's an inescapable law of this cosmology. It's not a mistake that needs apologizing for.
Even if it's inescapable, it's still a descent.
True, but even the perfect deities in the Golden Age don't call out to God. They don't even know God exists. Why? Because they are experiencing the reward of the cycle. The degradation you're talking about is simply the natural entropy of the soul playing its part on the physical stage over time.
Right, playing a part.
For anyone listening who might be thinking this sounds incredibly fatalistic, a fixed 5,000-year loop, it's important to understand how this text frames drama. The student's role is not to hate the cycle, but to deeply understand its beginning, middle, and end. When the text talks about the tree of humanity, it notes that different religions and dynasties only appear in later, degraded ages. A student must grasp this entire historical progression to understand their place in it. You can't just jump out of the cycle. You have to transition through the confluence age, the exact meeting point of the end of the Iron Age and the beginning of the Golden Age.
Exactly. The confluence age, the Sangam Yuga. Given this decaying cycle, how does the student actually live right now in this transition?
That is the big question.
The text gives highly specific instructions on how the student navigates this, and it leans entirely into my position of transcendent detachment. The student is instructed to maintain a Jwala Sarup, which translates to a volcanic or intensely powerful state of remembrance.
Right.
And how is this achieved practically? By viewing oneself purely as a Sarathi, a charioteer, and a Sakshi, a detached observer.
yes, the charioteer metaphor is central to the practice.
It is the entire core of the psychological practice. The text explains that realizing you are the soul, merely driving the chariot of the body, automatically detaches you from physical consciousness. Think about what this means for human psychology. The concept of jivandan, or dying alive, is essentially the ultimate anxiety relief tool. If you are already dead to your ego and your physical attachments, the chaos of the old world can no longer hurt you.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a powerful way to frame it.
If someone insults you, they're insulting the chariot, not the charioteer. You bring all physical senses under control through profound alienation from the body. You are a detached observer. You are not your body, you're not your physical family, you're not even the drama.
Right.
You are a transcendent point of light, linking directly to the Supreme Father to draw power. The physical realm is slated for destruction in a Mahabharat war. The student's only logical action is total withdrawal and detachment.
I understand the emphasis on Sakshi, the detached observer. But to frame the student's experience as purely a withdrawal into a volcanic, isolated medication completely ignores the immense, outward-facing action required in the Sangam Yuga.
Outward-facing action?
Yes. The text doesn't describe the confluence age as a silent retreat in a cave. It calls it a mela, a grand gathering or fair. It describes the meeting of the ocean of knowledge with the rivers.
The river's returning to the ocean, to be clear.
But the rivers don't just sit there in silent meditation. The text explicitly says that the students are these rivers of knowledge that emerge from the ocean to purify others. They are instructed to bathe others in knowledge and teach them yoga. They are active agents of transformation.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
The spiritual hierarchy presented is highly dynamic. You have the Shudras at the lowest tier, the feet, who are entirely bound by body consciousness and ignorant of the Father. The student, through the physical adoption by Brahma, becomes a Brahmin, the top knot.
Right, the highest stage.
The Brahmins are the ones who do the heavy lifting of world transformation to eventually become the deities of the new golden age. They aren't just passively observing the destruction of the old world, they are actively laying the foundation for the new cycle.
But, their capacity to act as a rivers of knowledge comes entirely from their connection to the ocean, which requires the detachment I'm talking about.
Well, sure, connection is needed.
They cannot purify anyone if they are still attached to their own bodily alloy. If you're still operating from a place of corporeal identity, you are a Shudra, not a Brahmin.
I agree that the bodily ego must be discarded, but the purpose of discarding it is highly corporeal. It is to literally change the physical world from a degraded Iron Age into a pure Golden Age.
Change the physical world? Yes.
Let's look at how this plays out in daily life. The text points out that the imagery of Vishnu, the four-armed deity, is symbolic of the pure family path, the Pravrti Marg. It heavily critiques the path of isolation.
It does critique the sannyasis. I will give you that.
Exactly. It critiques the sannyasis who leave their homes and go to the forests to find peace. Because frankly, it's easy to feel detached when you are sitting alone in a forest. The real crucible is maintaining your spiritual purity while dealing with traffic, holding down a job, and eating dinner with your family.
That is a very fair point.
The Brahmins stay in the world. They live with their physical families, but they maintain the internal consciousness of belonging to the one Father. They are purifying the corporeal world from within, using the physical body as an instrument of divine action. You cannot fulfill the role of a river if you refuse to flow through the land.
That is a fair distinction regarding the sannyasis, and I acknowledge that the text advocates remaining within the household. But the internal psychological reality of the student is still one of total detachment from the physical world's underlying mechanics.
Total detachment, though.
Yes. When the text says, "Mine is one Shiv Baba and none other," it means that even while sitting at that family dinner you mentioned, the student views their physical reality as essentially dead. They are interacting with the world, sure, but they are internally waiting for the Supreme Father to take them back to the realm of peace, the Mukti Dham. The action in the world is merely the final winding down of the old drama before the great silence. The highest stage is formless.
I think calling it waiting for the great silence misses the joy and the active responsibility the text places on the student.
How so?
They are told they are becoming the masters of Vishnupuri, the land of deities. They are actively reclaiming their inheritance. Yes, the old world is ending, but the focus of the student's mind is on the establishment of the new one.
The new world.
Right. The adoption by Prajapita Brahma means you are part of a massive divine family right now in the physical world, doing the highest work possible. It's an incredibly grounded, active spiritual state. It is not an escapist one.
Okay.
The detachment from the old body is necessary, but only so you can put on the new one, both metaphorically now through divine action and literally in the next birth.
Well, if we step back and look at what all of this means for the student, it seems we're really looking at two sides of the exact same coin of purification.
I think that's a fair assessment.
From my perspective, the truest reading of the student's path in this material is one of transcendent liberation. The entire thrust of cosmology is moving away from the suffering caused by physical incarnation.
Right.
To do this, the soul must recognize its ultimate incorporeal father, Shiva. It must utilize the profound psychological tool of being a detached observer, a charioteer, to shed the karmic alloy accumulated over 84 human incarnations. True spiritual elevation requires dying alive to the physical world so you can reconnect with the eternal source.
And looking at it through the other lens, the path outlined in the text is irreducibly dual and cyclical. You simply cannot achieve that purity without the corporeal anchor of Prajapita Brahma.
The descent through the 84 births is not an accident to be regretted. It is a fixed 5,000-year drama to be fully understood. The student's role is not passive escape. It is active participation in the confluence age, acting as rivers of knowledge to transform the world from a degraded Iron Age back into a pure Golden Age.
Right.
Transcendence in this framework is achieved not by abandoning the corporeal world, but by mastering it.
Yet, despite our different angles on the mechanism of this path, we both fundamentally agree that the material presents a highly specific cosmology, where dying alive to one's physical ego is the absolute prerequisite for spiritual rebirth.
Oh, absolutely.
The text demands a radical, uncompromising shift in identity, from a body-bound human to a spiritually awakened soul.
Completely agree. The tension between the incorporeal creator and the corporeal creation is the engine that drives this entire philosophy. It requires the student to hold two seemingly contradictory truths in their mind at once, that they are completely separate from the physical world, yet entirely responsible for its transformation.
It's a vast and fascinating landscape, and the dynamic interplay between the formless and the physical offers so much more for listeners to explore in the source material. We leave it to you to decide which lens, transcendent escape or corporeal transformation, best defines the spiritual path.
The material is certainly deep enough to support vigorous exploration of both.
Which brings us back to our crucible. When you throw the corrupted ore into the fire, are you trying to extract a transcendent spark to keep safe in a vault forever? Or are you forging a masterwork that must immediately be plunged back into the world?
The fire changes you. But what you do once you are pulled from the flames, well, that is where the true debate begins.